Welcome to the Developing Leaders series. My name is Miriam McLemore, former corporate CIO at the Coca-Cola Company and now enterprise strategist with AWS, where I partner with leaders globally to enable business transformation. We have invited leaders from around the world and across industries to share their insights on leadership, vision, strategy, and people development. Herve, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
I would love to start our conversation with understanding more about how you identify and select leaders.
So, it's of course a big theme, right? Trying to identify leaders. And I don't think there's a secret formula, or at least we haven't found it. But there's probably a few principles that we try to apply. Probably the most relevant one is really this notion of experience, of trying really to, throw people in the water and see if they swim, and then, move to the next step, etc. So we're not really, so much looking at, diplomas, degrees, etc., but more at how people are thinking, how they are behaving, their character, right?
Right.
And then how they face real life struggles and how they learn from mistake and move on. And that's really interesting. And then the problem, of course, is, trying to work on your leadership pipeline and identifying those interesting characters early enough so that you can keep on throwing at them, more and more interesting challenges and,
right.
Raise the bar as you move on.
Absolutely. And how do you get those people inspired to raise the bar?
I think it starts with meaning. In Schneider Electric, we have, I think, a very inspiring mission around, energy management and energy efficiency and sustainability, basically.
Right.
So we really link everything we do to a higher purpose, which is really sustainability and efficiency, whether it's energy efficiency or the efficiency of processes that are powered by energy. So connecting with meaning is super, super important. I think it's very important, instead of giving rules and to give context and
right.
give people freedom. I always say there's an interesting paradox in business between empowerment and control, right? I mean,
right.
If either you want super control, global processes, that are precise to the T and so forth, or you want to let people try things and feel empowered and accountable. And we're definitely lying on the side of empowerment over control, which made that, we accept sometime being maybe leaving a little bit of efficiency on the table,
right.
if it's the price to pay for people that feel empowered, that feel accountable, and that really are ready to learn.
And I love the term empowerment, and it's very inspirational to people. Can you talk about will you break that down, and how do you empower people? Is that decisions they can make? Is it scope of budget, size of projects? What does empowerment mean?
So probably it starts by, in many different positions, letting people some freedom in the how, right? Be clear on the why, be clear on the what, but then not try to micromanage people. So giving a space so that people can try things, can experiment is
right.
super important. So it's not so much a matter of budget. I mean, you can have a huge budget, right?
Right.
And not experiment or innovate at all. So
yes.
a lot of the early startups, are innovating incredible things with very limited means
right.
usually. So it's more really on the mindset of, sometimes you can ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Yes.
And
like
it's okay,
that.
right? If you're doing it with the right intent.
Yes.
And if you fail, well, you learn something and you move on, soon enough. So it's much more around the mindset than, any sort of standard, rule
right.
of engagement or anything like
procedure,
that.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you mentioned failure, and that's something Amazon is famous for, right?
Yeah.
Jeff says, we're the best place to fail. And you talked about experimenting. Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy at Schneider for failure?
The good thing with failure is that I have a lot of experience with that.
I do as well.
So I think it's, Again, it's a balance, right? And I think we try to define what is an acceptable failure, which is, A, you learn something out of it, B, you stop before it gets a problem, right? And C, there are some principles that are not negotiable. There are some absolute imperative, right, around ethics, around compliance, etc., integrity, all of that are not up for negotiation. So I think we try to create that bit of a framework and let people try. Let people really give a bit of freedom. And again, it's not something that we have necessarily written down, in the playbook of a company. It's more because, again, it differs, of course, from a function to another, from a part of a company to another. But in the digital team, typically, we're really giving people a lot of leeway to engage with new companies, to get outside of a company, sort of outside in thinking, get inspired, and come back and try stuff. I mean, we want transparency.
Yep.
We want basically, a good level of reuse, which means we don't want to do something if it has been done elsewhere. Right. And the third big principle is because, again, it's we have a big brand name, we're a global company, we need certification. I mean, things need, before getting mainstream and scaling, I mean, they need to fit a certain number of things when it comes to security, privacy, etc. Basically, those three principles, and that's it. Wow. And if you have to seek for forgiveness, and it's not you haven't done too much harm, that's fine. Move on.
Then you do feel empowered. Yes.
Exactly. As I like to say, we're at risk of learning something.
There you go. You talked about technology and bringing outside in. So how do you keep yourself and your team current on technology trends?
Well, I guess probably a few things. The first thing is that I took a fair amount of time curating my Twitter feed. So I follow quite a lot of people, VCs and leaders, etc., that are inspiring. And I think Twitter actually is a pretty good way of sort of knowing what's around, getting tidbits of information, food for thought, etc. So certainly one way. The second thing is spending time outside. So with customers, with partners, with VCs, with startups, etc., getting inspired. Trends, and we try to do it around the world. I mean, Schneider is a pretty global company. Of course, US is our number one country, but beyond that, take China, take India. I mean, those are important. There's a lot of interesting things happening in those territories, and we're trying to leverage our global scale also to try to have to identify technology trend. Everywhere they happen. For instance, in China, mobile payment was a big term even before the US. It was a big trend.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked earlier about failure in business, right? But, we all have, and we both said we've experienced failure along the way. What's kind of your favorite failure story that you experienced?
It's an interesting way to put it. I'm not sure if favorite failure are really two words that I've often used together. But actually before being in technology, I was in M&A, and I was driving on some pretty complex transaction. And as you do in M&A, some of them failed, actually.
Right.
The transaction didn't proceed, right? The deal didn't went through. So, and it has been always a pretty good opportunity for me to sort of reflect back, why didn't it work? Did I have a role? Be a bit humble about, what I did well and I didn't do well. And I think it's that notion of, self-reflection and sort of feedback is super important. So I can think of a couple of as large, M&A deal I was super really disappointed when they didn't went through, but after a couple of days of deep thinking, I felt re-energized because I learned so much.
Right.
Now I'm ready to be back on the horse and do things again. But it takes you a little time, right? So they're not your exactly to recover. So your favorite failures are not favorite right away.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. But I love wrapping our conversation in the spirit of reflection.
Yeah.
Right? That's
and I think it's important, right? The way
that's how you learn. Yeah.
That's how you learn, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world, right? With Twitter and emails and everything.
Yeah. Finding time to reflect.
Exactly. Finding time to reflect and think deeply about some things and thinking about, being principled on what's important and less important and how you prioritize on anything. It's for me at least, it's really something extremely important.
I agree. Herve, thank you so much for your time today. These were great insights for us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.